the SBD, the instructor would have us get into uh, more violent maneuvers where we'd get very steep turns and learn how to do wing overs and different accuracy maneuvers that we would do as we were gradually working our way up into the next phase, which was learning glide bombing, where we would go through the same procedure as dive bombing, but we would get more familiar with the attitude and the way the plane responded in a 40 or 50 degree glide angle. And then exposed, which is like a landing flap, which you're all acquainted with. And this was a landing flap that went up on the top part of the wing, as well as the landing flap that goes down below. So when you hit your dive flaps, it would open up on both sides. It would go up on the top and down on the bottom. And this, of course, slowed the airplane down so that you had a better chance of hitting your target, and it also increased your dive angle considerably over that of another airplane that didn't have dive brakes. And a lot of people says, I went diving at them, 30, 40, or 50 degrees, but when you're talking to dive bombing, it's a real spec all of its own. And dive bombing is tried to maintain 82, 86, 88 degree angle dives, and this is a considerably different environment, and it has to be handled differently, and that's why they were easing us into this, because you're learning how to fly the airplane down, straight down 3 miles under control, and to maneuver it as you're going down, being able to turn it. And of course you must keep your airplane in a stable condition. That is your needle ball. You can't be in any kind of a yaw or twist or anything. You have to be perfectly aligned all the time, or you'll never hit a target. You'll throw your bomb hundreds of yards off. During this phase of our learning how to become good dive bomber pilots, you would naturally, we were getting used to the fact that as you're diving, that you would get used to the ground coming up, which at first was kind of scary. And by having us diving continually, like 5, 6, or 7 dives a day, as we were doing near the end, it was now becoming very, very familiar, and that's what they wanted, was for any dive that you make, that it would be just a normal thing, and that you wouldn't be worried that you were going to fly into the ground. That here again they were building confidence in you and your ability to control the airplane. And we had an instructor flying around at 1,000 feet, and another one standing in the middle of the circle with his theodolite measuring our angle of dive. So when we got into the serious diving, it was quite a deal, and as you'd jam that stick up into the left-hand corner and ram your left rudder, and this plane would go right straight, you'd just go right straight down. To give you an idea of where the target was, when you look out, when you look right over the side of the fuselage, you can see where the wing joins the airplane. Well, it's right there in that corner where your target is. So when you push over, your attitude of your airplane is your engine is underneath the tail, if you know what I mean. You're falling with the wind is on your canopy. You aren't going straight down, you're going over straight down when you start these. And then you roll your tab all the way forward on your stabilizer. You could run it all the way forward. And this meant it was easier to fly, and you learn how to adjust that just exactly to your own personal taste. So it was a real interesting, it was about 6, 7 weeks for doing this, and it was a real interesting kind of a life downer at this time, because we'd fly. Sometimes we'd do a formation night flying, and then we'd sometimes would be on during the day and secure at 4 o'clock, and so we'd have our evenings off, and sometimes we'd have weekends off. And one day I was in Miami Beach, and I just left the guys. They were going to go to some show, and I was going to pop in and get some cigarettes and join them later. So I went in the drugstore, and as I was coming out, some enlisted, 2 or 3 enlisted men are coming out of there, and they banged me, and they smacked me right into this gal, and we both fell down, and I had landed right on top of this gal, and as she had a couple of packages, and so I'm picking myself off of her, and then excusing myself, and she could see what had happened with these three guys that had just knocked us over and ran down the street for whatever reason. So I'm picking her up, and she's having a hard time, and I thought, wow, this is some good-looking kind of a gal. And so I'm picking up her packages, and I thought, boy, this is someone I'd like to get to know. And so she's telling me that her ankle really hurts, so I put her arm around mine and kind of over my shoulder and help her. I asked her if she has a car, and she had a car, and she sure did have a car. She had a 1940 Cadillac convertible, and a green one, and it's parked down there just a few spaces down. So I'm helping her down to the car and everything like that, and she's really limping, and has her shoe off. And so I said, I identified myself, told her who I was, and she gave me her name, and that she was married to a surface Navy officer, and so there was another Navy station, not a naval air station, but a Navy station. So I said, maybe you want to check in at the dispensary and get your ankle checked. And so she said, I really can't drive. And I said, well, that's okay. I got plenty of time. I've got the whole weekend here, so great. So I jumped in the car, and we went to the dispensary, and we got acquainted, driving out there. And so the docs checked her over, and they put a bandage on it, and we went back, and I said, I'll drive you home, and so she had a nice little cottage right there on the edge of the water, and I said, well, what time is your husband going to be coming home, or is there anything else I can do for you? And he said, no, he's at sea. And she wasn't, she gave the opinion she wasn't really too happy with him. So what really happened was that she was about 6 to 8 years older than I was, but just a beautiful gal, and she came from Connecticut. Her folks had some sort of a horse ranch up there, and she really didn't like the Navy life, and she never thought this was the way it was going to go. She thought she'd be living her lifestyle up there, and then her husband, who had been in the Navy Reserve, was called up, and so we kind of played house there for about a month, 5 weeks while I was at Master Airport. So we had a pretty good time, and that's about as far as I can go on that. And anyway, we finished up all our training in the SBD there, and then we had orders to report to Cherry Point, North Carolina for reassignment, and so the 5 of us go tearing up there, and we check in, and who's sitting at the desk but this women Marine. We called them BAMs, kind of short for broad-ass Marines. And this is a big, heavy-set, freckle-faced girl with red hair, and it's Patty Bird, who was quite a golfer, quite a famous golfer back in those days. She lived just off 50th and Bryant, and she had a brother named Herman Berg, and he went to Washburn. I, knew him as an acquaintance. I didn't run around with him. He was about a year earlier than I was, and so I had met Patty Berg just casually, in and out of the house and around up on the corner of 50th and Bryant. I said, well, you're Warren, aren't you? And I said, well, I go by John now. And I said, really good to see you and everything. And I said, what's the word around here? How soon can we, how soon do you think we can move out and get going? She said, well, she said, everything goes by orders, Lieutenant. Yeah, I'm sorry, John, but there's not much we can do here. We take your orders and put them on the bottom of this pile here, and she had a pile about 6, 8 inches, thick, and holy smoke. So I said, well, really, I said, the 4 guys I'm with, they're all West Coast boys, and we really don't, really don't take this North Carolina thing, too straight, and we really would like to get out to the West Coast and get moving. And she said, well, gee, there isn't much I can do about it. I said, well, how does that work? Did you say when we came in, our orders go on the bottom, and those that are on the top are the ones that they sign first? Mm-hmm. That's right. Well, what are you doing? What time you secure? She says, it's 4 o'clock. And I said, well, how about the 2 of us? Is there a nice little place around here we can have dinner? And she said, well, there's the only place we can have dinner. And she named some dumb-sounding name. I don't know. I can't remember what the dumb name now was, but we jump in her car after she secures, and I split with the other 4 guys. They go back to the temporary BOQ, and so we go down this red, dusty road and get into a little town, New Bern or something like that, whatever it is. And it's full of Marines, but she knows her way around pretty good. So we go in a place and we have a pretty good little dinner and a couple of tiddlies, and bring her back, and we're talking about old times. And I said, Patty, I said, I hate to, keep pushing you on this thing, but I said, the plenty of us really, we've been through all night training together, and we're real close, and we've been in dive bombers, and that's what we are. Boy, we really want to get out to El Toro. I understand that's what's all happening, and everything is out there. That's where all the action is. And she says, well, let's see what I can do. And she says, if I'm successful, she said, you can get your orders in as early as 2 or 3 days. And so I says, okay, well, how about coffee tomorrow morning, something like that? And she says, yeah, I'll tell you what, we'll have a cup of coffee about 10:30. So I went up there and sat around a little bit at 10:30, and we're talking some more about old times, because she's about Uglies and Mud Fence, so I got her talking about golfing, and you can see she didn't have a large amount of boyfriends around. In fact, I don't think Patty ever did have a boyfriend. But so we had a cup of coffee, and I picked up a couple of rolls on the way coming up from the shack, and we talked some more. And then she says, I think things are going to turn out just the way you want. And she gives me a cute little wink. And so we just hang around there at night and go to a movie or something like that. And I'd go up and see Patty and see how everything was coming. And by God, 3 days later, we had our orders. And boy, these orders really looked, this envelope was big, and it opened it up, and the Fleet Marine Force, U.S. Marine Corps Air Station, El Toro, California, and blah, 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 subject to, from, and all that. So we report there. We got about 8 or 10 days to get there, which means that we'll actually have about 4 or 5 days at home. So she get a hold of a friend of hers on a horn and arranges transport for us, and the closest way for us in North Carolina is to fly up to Washington. And so this big famous actor, movie actor, Tyrone Powers, a pilot, he's a Marines. So they got him flying between Cherry Point and Quantico, Virginia, up to Washington, and he's flying around his dress blues, and he's a big ad for the Marine Corps, and that's good. So I get up there to Washington, and I got my tickets all set here, and they put us on the very latest American Airlines brand new super deluxe airliner, this DC-3. So we have a little chow, and what they do then, they had a little pillow. They had a little white pillow, smaller than what Mommy's pillow was. A little small white pillow, and on top of that, they'd put your airline pot roast. And so Burrell went up to Boston, and Doty grabbed another flight that was going out to Washington. He's from Walla Walla. And Eddie Fryer was going to Columbus, and he got on another plane. So anyway, I jumped on a plane to get back home to Minneapolis. We spent about 4 or 5 days And you're getting picked up on what's going on with the gang, and if anybody's around, nobody's around, and everybody's off doing their thing. So we had some relatives over, and we're talking and having little dinners here and there, and visiting with the relatives. And then I'm off to Toro, and we fly into I think it was Burbank or something, and took a marine bus up to Toro, and that was really something. This place was really busy. There was Corsairs and SPDs all over the place. So we're assigned our BOQs there, and we're also going down now with some more training in SPDs. Now we're learning some of the newest tactics and what they want. So we're refining what we're doing, what we've been doing out there. By now we got about a couple of $100 in this airplane, so we're very confident of it. And I had the chance to check out in Corsairs there also, and that was a real thrill. Whereas my SPD had 1,200 horsepower, the F4U had 2,000 horsepower. And so I got checked out and put in about 25, 30 hours in that. And of course we're secured, and the three of us went together and had a 39 Mercury convert. And what we used to do is tear up to LA, get up to Hollywood. And in those days, Hollywood and Vine was really a top-notch area. And there was a place there called the Brown Derby. And I met up with this KWA Bailey and his wife. He was another pilot. And his wife was a starlet. And so she introduced me to a couple of her friends. I can never remember their names. One was Louise Albritton, and the other one was Barbara Britton. And so KWA Bailey and I grabbed the Mercury. We go tearing up, and he's got his good-looking wife along with him, and these two gals, Louise and Barbara, are up there. We're going to meet him at the Brown Derby, and this is where they got Slim Gaylord, and they're having a great time. Slim Gaylord, Tiny Brown, and it's a three-piece black combo. All these guys were quite famous back in our day, and so they're singing wild-out songs like Avocado Seed Sandwich and all these crazy songs. So I had these two gals for a date, and boy, I was a pretty popular guy in that place. Everybody's trying to come over and meet the other gals, and I said, no, this is just right. I said, I'm the kind of a guy that needs two women for one night, and thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you later. So when I take these gals home, they had a great big multi-story apartment there in Hollywood, and it was much like a sorority house, and there were no men allowed, off the main floor. And you could go over to the elevator and they had the matron, the gal that was in charge of these women, and there were some gorgeous gals coming and going out of there. And I was trying to figure out some way I could beat this deal on the elevator, and the girls are kind of giggling, and this matron, looked like something that came out of a professional wrestling team. So there was no way that I would look around the outside, and there was no way I could. So I had to say goodnight to him, there at the elevator, and this matron, that she had everything except a baseball bat in her hand, so there was no getting around her. And then these gals got tied up on some other dates or some work there at one of the studios, and then I was out with KWA Bailey and his wife, and there was some function going on, whatever it was. Some sort of group of businessmen had put on a great big soiree for the servicemen, and this was a cocktail party and a dinner, and they had a band, and so I went along with Bailey and his wife, and I meet this other gal, this Jody Logue. And so we got to be pretty good friends, and she lived up in Whittier, California. And had a real good, responsible job, and was a real nice gal. So when I was taking flights out of Toro, I used to always, find a way of swinging around Whittier and coming down low and buzzing the place and identified kind of where she works. Whittier, California is where this guy Nixon came from. And Whittier is a real religious town. It's got 52 corners and 53 churches. And I'm not fooling. And this was just a real nice place. It wasn't too hard to get to. We're up around the tar pit someplace. We used to secure at around 4, and then I'd get in the car and run up there and would have a date, and I'd pick up some flowers, and we'd go out to dinner. We'd go down to the Brown Derby, and we'd hit these places, and there were all kinds of different parties, because this was just great. Here was the ocean, and God, I fell in love with that ocean. And this is Laguna Beach, 13 miles inland is El Toro. So we'd go down this dirt road, which is now quite a big highway, and we'd go down into Los Andes, and we were get to meet pilots that had been overseas and were coming back now, and they're being assigned as instructors, or they were forming up with a new squadron and taking shakedown drills and that. So we were doing a lot of flying out there, and we're mixing it up. We're flying both Corsairs and SPDs, but mostly SPDs, and we'd go out on the way out. We'd go way out past Catalina and do our different gunnery runs and practice dive bombing, and we'd go into El Centro, California. In El Centro, California, I had about 4.5 buildings at that time, and that was a big bombing tower. We had Trabuco and El Centro and a couple other places, and we were kind of smart guys at that time. We had the name of the tower. All towers are identified. Like out at Guadalcanal, it's called Cactus Tower, and at El Toro it was Honey Tower. And we had more fun with that because they had the bands up in the tower working with the other Marines and the male Marines and conducting traffic and so forth. And you can imagine the lingo we'd have with us. We'd call in, and the code words for the dive bomber was egg beater, and the code word for the fighters was chicken. So you'd be up there and say you had 8 chickens, and you'd call in, and your typical call would be like you'd say, "This is Marine Red Leader 1. I have 8 chickens, and I'm at 18,000 feet, 2 minutes south of Point X-ray. Landing instructions." And maybe the tower was real busy, so say, "Hey, honey, I got 8 net," and they'd jump on the horn right away. And you have to use proper conduct on your calls. So we always had a lot of fun. Honey, I got, and it's not honey identification, it's Honey Tower identification. He kept reminding us. So we'd have a lot of fun with the gals up there in the tower, and they'd, sometimes you'd get kind of a cranky one, and she wouldn't obey, and she'd just let you circle and let you hang up there. So one day I just said, "There's a Marine Blue Leader 1. We have 8 chickens at 1,000 feet, and we're in a critical gas switch. Could you please have the gas truck stop over?" And she said, "What's your location? Marine Blue Leader 1? And I said, "My location is 8,000 feet south end of the field." She said, "Don't be a smart ass." And I said, "Honey, we gotta land. We're all on empty." And we'd had stories like that were, and of course, it was getting kind of serious. That thing was kind of bobbling on E. But like I say, the girls would get kind of wrapped up in themselves and were going to punish us, so to speak. But you can just take so much punishment when your gas is running low. So we had a lot of fun there. And like I say, the nightlife was great because we had college girls and parties going on, and we had one thing and another. There were just different groups. There were university groups, and you had social groups, and you had business groups, and you had the Hollywood people, and they couldn't do enough for the servicemen, and you were always welcome up there. And we got to see quite a few of the name actor and actresses, and they had different functions, and some of them were just excellent, parties. We had a couple of times we had the big name bands at dances, and it just was a real great thing. And this is where I fell so in love with Laguna Beach and that whole area. We had a place called the Lasanas Club. We had a black piano player there, and Lasanas was right down on the beach, and you could just about put your glass out through the window and have it washed off by the water. It was just a neat spot, and of course it was all Marines. And the funny story there, after we come back after the war, when I'm out there with you, Kim, and Mommy, and then I'm looking around for this Lasanas one day by myself, and I walk in there, and I thought, this has got to be the place. Yep, this is the place, right across the street from that little teeny street there between the Laguna Hotel. And I walk in there and think, yeah, this is the place. God, I walk in there, and this, hi, guy. Holy, what in the world happened to this place? So I'm just stunned, and I look in there, there's nothing but pretty little boys all over the place. So I go to the booze place where we had a real great guy called Tony. He would, he'd always fix us up, after hours, any old time we needed a bottle of booze or anything. I walk in there and I said, hey, what the hell happened to Lasandas? He said, what Lasandas are you talking about? And Jesus, here's another one. So I finally go to a gas station, and of course I don't think you or Mommy knew this, and I said, what in the world's happened to Laguna? Well, the guy saying, okay, I understand, it used to be here during the war, right? Yeah. Well, this whole place became a beach colony, an artist colony. And we got all the kooks and freaks and everything you can imagine here. And I said, you sure have. But it was such a shock, because I thought, God, it's going to be so much fun staying there at that motel. What was it, the Brothers 2? I can run down there and see all the guys and, make all the old acquaintances, find out where all the old guys are and everything. And then I'd find out that the place was full of a bunch of $11 bills. Anyway, we had a great time at El Toro, and you'd start out a date with one girl, and you'd end up, taking another one home, and you wonder what happened to the first one, but you like the second one better. And it was really neat. These you were meeting sisters of the other pilots, and the folks would be coming down from nearby states and visiting with us. What the hell with me? So the day comes, and we finally get our orders. And all five of us are together, and so this is real serious stuff. So everybody is calling back home and saying goodbye. We don't know where we're going. We don't have any idea, and all our orders say is that we've been assigned Fleet Marine Force. We've been assigned to ComAir's SOPAC, which is short for Commander Air Southwest Pacific. So this got us into the deal. We had to get all our uniforms that we weren't going to be wearing any greens or raincoats or anything like that. So we were issued some dungarees and some boots and another issue of our flight jackets, and we got another issue of a couple of extra coveralls, or our flight overalls. And then we're off to, and then of course you had to have a backpack, you had to have a map case and canteens, and you had your 45 and your carbine, and so we're getting all our assignments and getting lined up as we're falling in for drills about where we should be at a certain time, and then they load us up in some buses, and off we go down to the dock, and there's this great big ship down there, and it's can't remember the name of it now. It's an attack transport, and there's some grunt Marines going aboard too. We've got there's an awful lot of what we call high-ranking officers in the Marine Corps. They were lieutenant and colonels and a couple of generals. And so out to sea we go. Just kind of trying to cut this a little bit short. So we sailed directly from San Diego to Pearl. Then as we're nearing Pearl, we had had a change there, and we went directly nonstop from San Diego right straight to Guadalcanal. And when we got to Guadalcanal, this was really something as we're approaching it.